So I find oftentimes with elderly people that they always want to give people advice, which is very nice. It's courteous of them, right? But they always complain that no one wants to listen to me, no one takes my advice, and they just have to watch people make these same mistakes over and over and over again. And I think the reason that I actually believe no one wants to listen to their advice is twofold. And I think one of them, the first one I'll get into, is largely younger people's fault, if not completely younger people's fault, to be completely honest, or kind of maybe more of a middle ground, but largely younger people's fault. And then the second reason is actually, I think, fully older people's problem, and it is 100% their fault for that. So I'll get into that later in the video, so stick around for that. But first things first, young people. The problem with young people is I feel like we all have this kind of superhero complex, or we're super anxious. Both kind of suck, but a lot of us, I think, until something bad happens to us, we have this superhero complex where we're like, not me though. Someone else might get in a car accident, someone else might have this health issue, someone else might get like COVID or something like this, whatever, but not me. We have that complex, and then something eventually happens to you. Maybe you destroy a joint, maybe you get an autoimmune disorder, maybe you get this weird illness or disease or organ problem or whatever it might be, right? And then you go, oh, okay, no, there are extra problems. And what I'm saying with this is sometimes in general life, we actually need to make our own mistakes before we realize, hey, I should have listened to that advice. And there's certain extraneous kind of circumstances that are a bit more obvious where someone's like doing heroin on the street and passing out and is on like an inch within death. And we're like, yeah, I probably don't want to do heroin. But like most of us at least, we're probably not really feeling heroin because we're like, oh, I see the byproducts of that. They're quite nasty. I don't want to do that. And I don't think I need to experience heroin to realize I shouldn't do heroin, right? It's a bit easier to tell, I think, for the mass majority of people, which is why most people don't do heroin. But when it comes to like a toxic partner or financial mistakes, like you put your money in the wrong place or you spend too much of it, you're not saving. Maybe you just invest in the wrong thing, like what I've done, where I put in penny stocks. I was like, I'm going to be the guy that hits the lottery on this. I did not, right? But I needed to go through some of those things. I needed to go through health problems and injuries to realize I'm not a superhero. I do make mistakes. And as much as, yeah, I can see someone doing heroin on the street, and I've never done heroin because I see, I don't want the byproducts of that. I don't want to deal with those problems. That makes sense to me. Whereas there's other problems that an elderly person might give you advice with that would be extremely helpful for your life and quite applicable even. But you need to go through those mistakes to learn from them. And I think what life really is making mistakes and hoping that the consequences of them aren't so large that they destroy your life, while learning from them and not making that mistake again. And I think the problem, well, yes, it might have been helpful in the first place to never listen to an old person. I don't think you'd ever actually truly learn that lesson unless you've gone through some of them. There's some circumstances where you don't need to. There's some where it'd be a lot more helpful to not have those scars with you. There's a full storm going on. We're just going to deal with it today. I don't even know what's happening. But there's sometimes where you kind of need to get those scars, and then sometimes it'd be more helpful to not have them. But I don't think you truly learn a lesson unless you're in the thick of that problem, which I think, yes, this is largely young people's fault, but I also think it's just kind of how life works. We need to make mistakes and learn from them. And as long as you don't make that mistake again, I think you've done a good job with your life personally. So it's nothing against elderly people when they give you that advice, but I think it's just how life goes. It's how we learn, it's how we make mistakes, and it's how we move on. And hopefully the consequences aren't so large that you die or something in the process of making those mistakes. But that's just what life is. We need to make mistakes. We're human. We learn. We move on. So that's my first point. My second point is actually very harsh against elderly people because what they always do is say a 75-year-old person's giving you advice. Yes, they've been through a lot. Yes, they have a lot of experiences. Perhaps they even have some wisdom with that and they've reflected on life. But the problem is, say like when I was 18, I got advice from elderly people a bunch. I'm an 18-year-old, the 75-year-old person's giving me advice. The problem, though, is 75-year-old person advice to an 18-year-old isn't applicable, right? It's kind of like me trying to transfer something from my iPhone to my computer with the wrong adapter. It won't connect properly. So now that message will never get through. Although it might be a good message, it will never get through properly. And what this is fully elderly people's fault though, because what they need to do is they need to say, I'm 75. The benefit of being 75, intellectually at least, is I have the wisdom and experience of life. And I also should have the empathy of being, yes, I was 18 once, I was 30 once, I was 40 once, 50 once, whatever it might be. I was those things, and I have the empathy connector for that. Intellectually, I should be smarter than these people because I've been through more and I've learned more and I've adjusted my life more throughout the mistakes that I've made within my life, right? And what they need to do is take a 75-year-old person's wisdom, but instead of taking their advice that they would apply to their own life, they need to take the empathy from when someone is 20 when they were 20, and they need to say, here's the wisdom I need to apply to this person's life, but I need to inject that through their lens and through a 20-year-old's perspective, an 18-year-old's perspective, whatever it might be. Because if you don't transfer that and make it applicable to that person, it's useless, right? It's like an elderly person giving a young person advice is so often like getting a basketball coach to coach a soccer team. Although you might be the best basketball coach ever in the entire world, the history of the universe, whatever, you're not going to help that soccer team very much because you didn't transfer it properly so the young person can actually understand where you're coming from, so the soccer team could actually apply it to their own personal sport and their own life, right? That's the biggest problem I think with old people is they never adjust their lens and perspective. And I have an example for this. When I was 18, in Canada, we have pensions, obviously, and we have TFSA, which is a tax free savings account, which is the best account because you put money in that, you don't get taxed on it whenever you take it out. The only thing is you have a limited contribution. But you also have that with pensions, and you also get taxed with pensions, and you also have to make it to 65, generally, maybe 55, depending, before you can take that money out of your pension. My grandparents were either going to give me $200, which is both are very courteous. Don't get me wrong. That's not the point of this though. $200 to do whatever I wish with, or $400 in my pension. And my thing is, well, why can't I just put $400 in my tax-free savings account? Because my argument was, I need that money liquid because right now I have to live 3 more lifetimes before I come my grandparents' age. I need to live my lifetime 3 times over before I'm their age. I need to get through a lot of shit. Like, you know what I mean? That pension isn't going to help me until I double my life, and I'm not going to be their age until I triple my current life. That's not very helpful at all. So with that, it's like I'd much rather put this money in a TFSA, and if shit hits the fan, which in my life it actually did, then I have that money liquid, and I still did a good thing with it. But if I need it in a do or die emergency, I have that money available. Whereas in a pension, I'm screwed, and then I'm just going to get taxed to hell. And it's like you just gave me $200 anyways. But if we put this in a TFSA, it would be the best route possible for me. And their problem was they wouldn't listen to me because they, from their perspective, realized how important a pension was in their actual life. I'm like, yes, I get that. Because you are over 70 now, yes, a pension is helpful, and you're finally reaping the rewards of that, right? You're getting the fruits of your labor, basically, with your pension. But for me, I need to live another 45 years, virtually, before I can actually take that money. That's not helpful. And then it was like 47 years at that point. I need to live like another 47 years before I can take that money and actually help my life. I need to get through a lot of stuff in life, and I need money to do that, especially with our current economy, in order to get there. And they weren't able to change the lens and say, hey, yeah, you know what? You do need that money liquid. We're going to transfer this from our perspective on life to a 20-year-old perspective on life and kind of meet in that middle ground, which is what we should do here. And they would refuse to do that. And the reason why I don't listen to elderly people's advice is because they always give me 75-year-old person advice and not 20-year-old person advice with the wisdom of a 75-year-old. That's the difference. That's why no one listens to old people. It's because they never transfer it to be relevant to the world today. The world's changing. People are changing. You're changing. You're actively changing. The way you see the world isn't applicable to a 20-year-old anymore. That's why no one listens to elderly people because their life advice just isn't helpful anymore unless they transfer it to younger people's ages. That's the problem. It can be helpful, but they front it too much with their ego rather than with their wisdom, which I find profoundly ironic because they just want it to be about, I need to regurgitate this advice because I don't want to see people go through mistakes. And they want to be so damn right about it instead of actually making that advice applicable for young people. That's why no one listens to this, right? So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. That's why I don't think anyone listens to like elderly people's advice, and that's why often I think you shouldn't in a lot of ways. I think if they transfer it to be applicable to your life, yes, you should listen to the advice, obviously. But if they don't help you help them, it doesn't work. They need that adapter, right? You need a soccer coach for soccer. That's how this works. That's how that comes full circle. So you should probably listen to some elderly people's advice when they make it applicable, but largely they don't. And honestly, I think that's more so their fault than yours. And I think that's something that elderly people really need to, I very much ironically, be a lot less naive about and start to mature with if they want people to listen to them. Because they do, and they want to help. And I really appreciate where it's coming from the bottom of their heart. But it also needs to be generally helpful and actually achievable within reality for me to take that advice and make it make sense in my life. And they need to listen as well. Young people, or sorry, old people, absolutely need to listen to young people. Young people are smart, they have things to say, they have experiences, and they are currently living their lives right now in a world that elderly people have never lived a young adult life in. Old people need to listen to young people so damn badly and get rid of the egos. It's such a huge problem, in my opinion. And it goes both ways. It does. But I think largely everyone says you need to listen to your elders, and no one wants to listen to young people. And I think it's the dumbest thing on the planet. So, kind of irritates me. But hopefully, old people mature. They won't, because I don't think they ever have, and they never will. My generation will largely be the same when we're elderly. That's how it goes. And I think there are a lot of elderly people that give good advice out there. But I think so largely it's lost on us because they're giving advice from 1965 to my life, and it's like that's not really helpful though. You know what I mean? The world's changed 10 times over since then. There's a different life. So that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah, if you liked this video, like it. If you really liked it, subscribe. If you didn't, don't. Either way, comment below thoughts, feelings, opinions. Do you listen to old people's advice? Do you not? Well, let me know why or why not. And yeah, that's it for this one. So have a good day, and see you later.